Hi, class. I'm glad you're here. I hope everyone's doing well. As always, I appreciate your time and your attention. So let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? This is the scenario, all right? I'm a complete stranger. You've never laid eyes on me before. You're a stranger as well, and you're standing in line at the coffee shop, and then I bump into you. Okay, that's the scenario. Oh, hey there, how's it going? Well, I'm having the worst day ever, that's for sure. I got up in the middle of the night last night to use the bathroom and I stumped my toe, and I'm really afraid of the dark as it is. Now my toenail's peeling up. I know, right? Kind of gross, but I don't even care because I broke up with my girlfriend. Well, technically, she broke up with me. Can you believe that? And then I get up this morning to make a cup of coffee, and my coffee pot doesn't work, which is why I'm here standing in line with you fine people. What's your name, by the way? I'm Jace. How's it going? Okay. End scene, right? How did you initially feel in that interaction? Did it feel like too much too soon? You're standing there just trying to get your coffee and you're like, who is this guy? And he's unloading all this stuff on me. We've probably been there before. And did it make you feel uncomfortable? Did you feel your guard kind of going up? You racing questions in your head? How am I going to address this guy? Maybe it made you feel a little cringe, you know? We've all been there. Maybe you've been on a date before. Someone just starts word vomiting everything and you just get overwhelmed and you're like, whoa, slow down. This is way too much. And so today we're going to be talking about social penetration theory, how relationships develop. And really, at the heart of this theory, we're asking the question, how do people decide what to reveal, when, and how deeply? Again, how do people decide what to reveal, when, and how deeply? So, back to that scenario just a moment ago, why did that feel so uncomfortable? Well, because we can all agree maybe that relationships, conversations, they tend to have an unspoken natural order, right? On how things go. So in that case, oversharing violates those norms of timing, trust, and context. In that scenario, the timing, you just met me. You don't know me. And here I am telling you all these deep, dark thoughts and feelings and things. Trust, again, why should you trust me? And why should you even engage? You don't know me from anyone else. And then the context. It's not like you were on a planned outing with me as that stranger, like we were over a dinner date or something, or meeting up for lunch as friends. Again, we were strangers. So that's why it kind of felt like a violation of norms. And so, taking a closer look now at what is social penetration theory, this is a theory from Altman and Taylor dating back to 1973. Yes, this theory is more than 50 years old, older than me if you can believe it, but it's still relevant and applicable to today in many scenarios of our lives when it comes to conversations, relationships. And so, what is social penetration theory? The definition they give is relationships develop through gradual, reciprocal self disclosure. And we're going to dive in a little bit deeper on what that means. Uh, Again, the emphasis on gradual, reciprocal self disclosure. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but be thinking about that and how that applies to your own lives and different relationships you have with people you barely know, friends, family, people who mean a lot to you. And notice before we move on as well, what is that over here on the side of the screen? It looks kind of like a target, right? If you ever played darts or a game like that, um, archery, it is more challenging to try to get that bullseye, right? It's more of a challenge to hit that smaller circle in the middle. And that brings us kind of how to Altman and Taylor and how they lay out and visualize this theory. This is a good visual for you to understand this concept. So take a look here. The onion model is what they came up with, and it's pretty basic. It's, take a look there. On the outside, more superficial information. Then you get into social, which is again kind of your friends, family who know you. And at the core, that's really who we are deep down inside. We don't always reveal that information. And I'll talk a little bit more about depth and breadth in just a moment. We'll come back to this, but you get the idea. The closer in you get is the core of your being. And here's just another example of that model laying those out. So the outer layers, biographical data, that's your name, how you identify, the basics of who you are, where you're from. You get a little deeper, your preferences, clothes, food, music, getting a little deeper, your goals and aspirations. That's probably something you wouldn't have shared with me in line at the coffee shop, right? And then even deeper religious convictions. I know for some people, faith is a very personal thing, but some are more outward with their faith, but still your religious convictions are something that are part of who you are deeper inside. And then we get into deeply held fears and fantasies. Again, these are things that maybe you keep inside that you're not always going to share with just anybody, even your closest family or friends. And then you see at the very center is your concept of self. Those are those deep inner thoughts that you have that really make up who you are. So again, you can think of yourself as an onion. Hopefully, you don't smell like one. But that's a good visual on really what makes us up, our thoughts as we develop relationships. And you see some of these other topics on the outside: taste, studies, worldview, dating. That kind of goes back to that last um, model that we see here. So breadth is the wide range of topics that you would cover with any given relationship. So I just mentioned some of those examples a moment ago. So breadth kind of surrounds just the myriad of topics you can talk about. And then we're going to go deeper, if you will, into what depth means and how you get closer to the core of your being. So that's the three core elements here of social penetration theory I want you to pay attention to with the onion model in mind. Depth, and don't get hung up on the definitions because we're going to go into them a little deeper here in a moment. You have depth, breadth, and we'll talk about the importance of that third ingredient, reciprocity. So breadth versus depth. To help you visualize this as well, breadth, you can think of the width of something, right? So that's the range of topics that people discuss. And so the wider range of topics you explore together in a conversation or in a relationship, that just means your breadth is wider. You can talk about anything: hobbies, classes, family, goals. Again, it varies the layer of that onion that you're talking about, but still that's the breadth of topic, the myriad of topics you're talking about. Depth is how personal or intimate those topics become. So think about, you saw that arrow before. If I go back a couple real quick, that arrow before, diving into the core of who you are as a person. So how personal or intimate those topics become. So the deeper you get toward your core, you're getting into some deeper topics. And a quick note here, breadth and depth are on the same slide because they are somewhat related. I mean, it's kind of understood the more topics you talk about with somebody, you may get a little deeper. Now, that's not a guarantee. Again, you could talk to, what would I name him? Jace in the coffee shop. You could talk about a lot of surface level breadth topics. That doesn't necessarily mean you're getting deeper, but usually the longer you're in a relationship with someone, the more you get to know them. And that's where reciprocity comes in. That's the third ingredient of this theory, really. People disclose more when the other person shares at a similar level. You're basically breaking down those walls. So, match sharing builds that trust step by step. As you get to know someone better, you feel more comfortable with them, right? You end up sharing more personal inner thoughts. And keeping that pace prevents any discomfort from oversharing. Again, it's a pretty simple concept and it makes sense, but you really got to take a step back and again apply this to your life and consider how this has worked with other relationships that you may have developed over time, and really think about that reciprocity and how it played a role in getting to know someone deeper and getting closer to their core as an onion slash person. Okay? Key takeaways of social penetration theory in a nutshell here again: you have breadth, how many topics we open up about; depth, how deep we go, how personal and intimate those topics get; and finally, reciprocity, sharing that is matched and returned over time. And so those relationships deepen through gradual, reciprocal self-disclosure when the timing and trust are right. In that coffee shop, maybe the timing wasn't so right. The context where we met, it was a little bit too much too soon. Okay, and that's where we get to our group activity today, our scenario chart that we're going to make. I have a few poster boards I'm going to pass out for you and markers, and the reason I want to do that and have you physically make something is so you can commit it to memory. That's a great way to learn. So here are the 6 quick things I'm looking for, these 6 elements. I want you to come up with a relationship context, a realistic setting, roommates, coworkers, new friends. Come up with a scenario. and just make it not too sensitive. You get the idea. I want you to come up with an outer layer disclosure, something kind of surface level you would probably talk about with that person, a deeper layer disclosure, and then give an example of breadth and depth with one example each, and then also give a reciprocity example, show how the sharing is matched and then returned to the other person, and then talk about timing, trust, and boundaries. Include a brief note on why these matter in your scenario, and we'll talk about it as a class here in just a moment. I know that's a lot of information. I'll keep it up for you, and we'll get to work.